Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first webinar from Seller Labs. Well, when I say first, I mean it's the first one where I'm hosting. And to me, that's really all that matters. We've got attendees coming in right now as we speak. We'll give them just a couple of moments to roll in. In the meantime, I do want to introduce two of the best minds in the business and me. We've got Jess Wright and Megan Benoit. Jess, would you mind telling us a little about yourself?
Sure. So I am the brand strategist here at Seller Labs. I've been on the team for about 2 years, actually 2 years exactly as of 2 days ago. And I work with all of our team, but also our clients, and then externally with our partners as well, to just make sure we're all up to date and aware of what's new and what has changed with Amazon and e-commerce in general.
Wonderful. Excellent. I'm glad you're here. It seems like yesterday that you came on board, and I can't believe 2 years have passed. But Megan, tell us about yourself.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I am an account manager, and I've been with Seller Labs since 2021. I've worked with a diverse set of clients in various categories, some that have been brand new to Amazon, others that have been selling on Amazon for over a decade. So I have seen the ins and outs of Amazon and have also reviewed a lot of listings in my time.
Fantastic. Glad you're here as well. Thank you. And I don't want Megan to sell herself short. She's one of our senior account managers, officially speaking. And you know that she means business at that point.
Yes.
I think it's been long enough for us to get started. Now, before I start sharing my screen and showing you these Amazon listings, I just want to say, again, what we're here to do is gently but firmly explain the things that we would recommend changing about these Amazon listings in order to bring more conversions to you as a seller. Anything that either of you would like to add before we show these listings off?
I mean, I think it's important to note, like, no listing is ever going to be perfect. So if we're showing your listing today and we're critiquing something, just know that every listing out there has something to critique, and Amazon changes things constantly. So if you're good today, you might not be tomorrow.
Indeed. Excellent point to make. That does remind me of another point that I meant to make a few moments ago. I'm in beautiful northern Georgia, and it just so happens that a storm is rolling through right now. So if I do lose power, I apologize in advance, but my wonderful co-hosts will pick up in my stead while I switch to my backup plan. I'm not going to tell you what that is, and that sounds very mysterious and interesting. It's not. I'll explain if I have to do it. But okay, we are about to get started with showing you some listings. Now, this first listing that we have, it's hard for me to say anything terrible about this listing whatsoever, but I want to ask, what jumps out to the two of you about it?
So first thing for me, just looking my way from top to bottom, is the title. And it's not a terrible title, but generally speaking, on Amazon, style guidelines do specify that you put the brand name first. So brand name followed by, the item name, followed by any specifics about the item, the variation or the size or anything like that. So yeah, ideally we'd like to see the brand name there, Blakeway Panoramas first, and then followed by the Alabama football at Twilight, and then also the size. Not having the size in the title, I think, could hurt conversions because people don't know what size it is. They may just gloss over that in the search results because they don't know if it's the size they're looking for or not.
I agree entirely. And Jess, that last point that you made is one of the most important aspects of that. You may say to yourself, well, the product dimensions are right there. They're also in the bullet points, but you're not going to see that in a search page. So it is important right off the bat, as soon as they see your title and your image, they need to know what's going on with that listing. Megan, what jumps out to you?
The first thing that I see are the bullet points. I do like that they have the all caps short snippets at the beginning. I think those are really important to have. It's a quick glance and it tells a shopper a little bit of a story briefly from those. But I do think the bullets could be shorter, a little bit more concise. Bullets should be around 200 characters each max. And also I see one that has punctuation. No punctuation is needed. They do not have to be complete sentences. They do not have to be complete thoughts. They are just bullet points, just to get some details to a shopper clearly.
Excellent. I agree. Now, I will add a couple of things that we talked about over the last week about bullet points specifically. One, the character limit is important, and Jess, we confirmed officially one direction or the other that it's total
Yeah.
characters that matters most or individual bullets.
Individual. So it used to always be total characters. You could have 5 bullet points, 200 characters each, or 1,000 characters total. As of this week, when I was trying to do some flat file updates for various clients, I kept running into a specific error that I haven't gotten before, which was they were limiting specific bullets. If a bullet was over 200 characters, even if that bullet was existing before the other edits, they were requiring us to edit those listing or to edit the bullet down to 200 characters or less before the file could be processed. So they do seem to be cutting back on bullets again.
Interesting. Combine that with some information we talked about with mobile placements, and the bullets get even more interesting. We had talked about bullet points being collapsed on mobile placements as well, right?
Yeah, so that's something that rolled out last year, but we're still seeing it. Is, you know, you'd see basically the product photos where it says the couple of key attributes it calls out there: material, color, style, theme, product dimensions. And then below that would be squished, and you'd see additional details down below, and you'd have to know that the bullets were collapsed to be able to expand them and go in and look at those. So it does kind of point overall to Amazon maybe deprioritizing listings or bullets, and deprioritizing even maybe text on listings in general.
So to make it as visual as possible, to do less reading.
Yeah.
Take a quick note, by the way, viewers at home or work or both, like we're doing. Little secret, I'm not actually in a lab. But take note of that. We're going to talk about making things more visual here in just a moment as well. But before we get to that, I want to make a special note. This is tangentially related to your listing, and it's more related to stuff that's going on behind the scenes. This right here is the first thing that I noticed. I come from an advertising heavy background, and this is going to be an important part of advertising, as well as conversion when people get to your listing. You'll notice it says sold by Blakeway Panoramas, but also ships from Blakeway Panoramas. That means it's FBM, fulfilled by merchant, not FBA, fulfilled by Amazon. And that means that people aren't going to get the warm and fuzzy feeling of seeing a Prime badge right there. It also means that, you notice up here, free delivery, March 8th to 10th. What's today again? You'd think I'd know with the webinar being on today. It's March 3rd. So it's going to be up to a full week before they get this. Having an FBA offering on your product can increase conversion rates. Again, not just because of how fast it's going to get there. Let's say, for example, you have a shared listing. FBA is usually going to be a more attractive offer, and you'll win the buy box more often. And finally, having another offer in addition to your FBM offer could be a good idea, just in case you go out of stock in one or the other. But enough about that from me.
I would like to chime in on that really quick. For the buy box specifically, I've had a client who was brand new to Amazon, so a brand new selling account, and of course a brand new product. And at the launch of that product, he was FBM and did not have the buy box for 90 days. Typically after 90 days, they will give you the buy box, but if he was FBA, he would have most likely received the buy box a lot sooner than that. And since then, he has been selling on Amazon for over a year, but recently launched another new product that is experiencing the same thing, similar situation, FBM, even though he has more seller history. If he was FBA, he would win the buy box more likely.
Very interesting. Thank you for the extra info, Megan. I appreciate that.
Of course.
It's almost as if capturing that buy box is critical to making sales and even advertising. We'll touch more on that in a minute, but bottom line is if you don't have the buy box, you're not advertising. With very rare exception, I'm sorry, I'm that kind of person. I have to add that to the end. There's one ad type, I think, where you can serve ads without the buy box, but that's no good because they can't buy it anyway.
I mean,
Anyway,
they can buy it. They just have to go through those extra hurdles,
right.
which is a barrier of entry for a lot of Amazon shoppers. They don't get it. If there's not an add to cart button, they sometimes can't figure out how to add to cart.
Indeed. I was going to say very few Amazon shoppers will come down here and look for that. Does anyone else sell this item?
Yeah.
I'd like to switch over to images for a moment. Is there anything that jumps out to you about the images that Blakeway has for this item?
I would recommend moving those lifestyle images up to right behind just the image with the white background. Move them up because it shows the product in a setting, which would really help for shoppers to gauge how big it is. Even though, like we said, size is listed in the bullets and in the description, people still will not fully grasp the size of it. So more lifestyle images higher up, I think, would be very beneficial.
I absolutely agree. And I will say that the images look good. I do want to add that in there. They look good, but reordering images can matter almost as much as the images themselves. And I do want to note, they do have similar images across variations, but they're distinct enough to point out which one is which. Now, at the bottom here, something we didn't look at is this video, and we'll let that play for a few moments. I don't hear anything, which means you shouldn't hear anything either. Our prints show incredible detail. Now, that's interesting. Let's let the video finish, and then I do want to touch on that a little bit. Standard frame. Select frame. I mentioned I'm in North Georgia. I will not hold it against you, Blakeway, for having an Alabama framed photo here, but that's okay. Find your team. Looks like you have UGA. I saw it right there. All right, so that's the video. Now, I do want to go back to this frame from the video. Is that something that should be one of the images and not just in the video?
Yes.
Showing the detail, I think.
Yeah.
None of the images show the up close of the actual photograph. So having that zoom in is very helpful.
Indeed. I agree 100%. It helps to show just how high quality this product is, which you do want to show off. Now, there's a couple more things I want to talk about with this listing. One a little further down the page, and then one more after that. We're going to go back up to the top and talk about it. But first, let's scroll down and see the A+ content on this listing. Here we have Blakeway Worldwide Panoramas Incorporated, Bryant-Denny Stadium, Alabama Crimson Tide, quality frames and framing, frame options. Not bad, but I'm willing to bet there could be some tweaks to the A+ content as well. What do y'all think?
For sure. If anybody who's ever heard me critique a listing before has heard me talk about the wall of text. So like up near the top of the A+, in this case, it's not too bad, but as you get further down, there's more and more and more text. And as we've already talked about with this listing and Amazon's general trend to seem to be pulling away from text and making things more visual, A+ content is really your place to do that. So having this much text really takes away from, what A+ can really do, which is give you a ton of visual, really attention grabbing pieces of content that shoppers will gravitate towards. Instead, with all that text, they're going to just scroll right through.
Indeed. You remember that foreshadowing from earlier? This is what I was talking about. Show, don't tell. Make it very visual. As we talked about, Amazon may or may not, it does appear that they are reducing the amount of text visible in favor of visual content to make it attractive to customers. Is there anything in this A+ content that could be visualized in particular?
I see a bullet point that says we pay royalties that support scholarships. I think that is a important thing to make more obvious in either the bullet points or the A+. That would be something as a shopper, that might be the differentiation between you and a competitor. Someone may want to support this because you're supporting scholarships.
I agree.
Yeah.
Anytime that I see anything like we donate to charity, we support scholarships, anything similar, that incentivizes me to choose to spend my money with you as a seller. I would put that not only in your A+ content, I might make it one of your bullet points. I would start putting that in as any relevant placement that you can to show people that that's something that you do.
Which in the A+ content, maybe instead of just being a bullet point like that, but a really fun infographic that, makes that stand out a lot more. I think the same with the bullet point underneath that one, which is the we follow official team style guidelines. I think you could do something really cool visually with that to show those style guidelines and call out a few different teams, which then also is a little bit more engaging to the shopper who might be looking for a specific team if on this listing they see some other stuff that they're interested in as well.
I agree. We talk about how visual Amazon is becoming. Team mascots, logos, colors are designed to be eye-catching in and of themselves. And so it just makes sense for you to have the ability to put those bright colors and eye-catching logos in there within reason. You don't want to misrepresent as being official merchandise if you're not, or anything like that. But I agree wholeheartedly. Make it eye-catching with something that's relevant, just like that.
One more thing too, I just noticed the term on here, fan cave. I love that. I just want to call that out. I've never seen it. I've seen man cave, I've heard she shed, but I've never heard fan cave. So I like that.
That's a new one on me too. I have not heard that. I do like it though.
I'm a fan.
A fan cave. Although it just makes me think of fans, the spinning things
Fan of
that
it.
are around. I'm not super into sports. I'm sure you can't imagine that since I'm wearing a lab coat and sitting in a lab. Now, there is one more thing I want to talk about with this listing, and it's back up at the top. And it is, to me, one of the biggest things that's missing from this listing. And it should be right here, right under the title. And it's the reviews. I'm looking and I don't see them. Now, there are a few factors that could contribute to that. One of the biggest is time. If it hasn't been very long since the listing has been around, then maybe there hasn't been a lot of time to cultivate those reviews. As we can see, date first available is October 25th of last year. How do the two of you feel about that? Is that long enough to have cultivated some reviews?
Ideally, yeah.
Gotcha. So a recommendation at this point is not necessarily a listing recommendation, but a broader recommendation to cultivate reviews whenever possible. What are the best ways for sellers to do that?
Well, since they are not FBA, they cannot do a specific Amazon program, which would be Vine. But they could set up review request. Especially through our pro software, we have templates and they can be automated to email someone who ordered your product and asking them with Amazon's compliant terms for a review.
That's my particular favorite. I realize, yes, if another notch in suggesting going FBA, I realize you may not be able to, in this case, printing this may be something that FBA doesn't jive with, but as Megan said, that also means you're not able to take advantage of Vine for reviews when you launch a product. But again, buyer seller messaging, virtually every seller should be able to message customers. That could result in more reviews. Now, again, you can see reviews on the search page. You don't necessarily have to come into the product detail page to see that, meaning that somebody may not even make it here if they don't see any reviews. Again, though, as Jess mentioned, the Amazon shopper may not be wholly savvy here, and they may not realize that the reviews are missing. But when they get to this page, they will absolutely think to themselves, wait a minute, do people like this product? I don't know.
Yeah, and I wouldn't 100% rule out Vine, even for a product of these dimensions where it's not ideal to stock at FBA all the time. If you are struggling to get reviews and it makes sense for you as a business to spend a little to get those, then maybe you do consider sending in a few units to FBA just so that you can enroll in Vine. So you have that that Vine fee plus the cost of FBA, which are typically a little bit more than probably fulfilling yourself for the size of the item because of the storage and all of that. But long-term could be a really great strategy. And because there are 4 products on this listing, Vine does work out to be a little bit better deal because you enroll at the parent ASIN level.
Excellent.
So it's always an option, even if you don't intend for that to be your long-term main fulfillment strategy.
Indeed. Thank you for that, Jess. By the way, for those of you out there viewing this, I realize that we have spent a pretty good chunk of time talking about this listing in particular. The reason is this is a big one. And, there's lots of little things that can be changed. And that means that as we continue on through these listings, there's application so we can say, hey, remember when we talked about that? There are other things to talk about on the other listings, but we just want to make that clear as well. Anything else before we move on to the next one? All right, let's go. Now we're going to take a look at Vital for You Vitamin Premium Multivitamin. Again, I just want to toss it out there to the two of you. What jumps out at you about this one?
So since I started off on the last one and it was about the title, same thing this time, but for a different reason. So there's a lot going on in this title as compared to the last one, which, was pretty much straight and to the point and just needed to rearrange some things. And this listing, I'd say we're kind of in the range of keyword stuffing here. Just trying to get some keywords in there for the sake of having keywords. And that is not a great tactic from the shopper point of view. That doesn't draw in shoppers, but also from Amazon's, specific style guidelines. And from Amazon's point of view, they want you to get straight to the point with this. There are different, I'm not sure what the actual character count is here, but each category does have different standards, typically in the 150 to 200 character range. But Amazon actually recommends much less than that. Even if you're allowed to use 150 characters in your title, in your category, Amazon actually recommends 80 characters or less for titles.
Interesting.
And I know for a lot of sellers that sounds crazy. They want to get as many keywords in there as they can, but there are other places in your listing to do that. And the title really should not be that place. You really, like I mentioned on the last one, you want to start with your brand, the product name, any variation, like if it's got a color or anything like that, or size, and then like in this case, the count of what's included there. And that's all you really need.
Is there anywhere behind the scenes that they could add keywords or search terms to put those there rather than in front of the customer's eyes?
Yep. Yeah. Back in search terms in the item setup. And that's really the preferred place to put them. So that you don't have this kind of keyword stuffing situation, but you still can index for those things.
Excellent. How about you, Megan? What stands out to you?
Once again, the bullet points, these don't have the all caps word or phrase at the beginning, which I do recommend doing those. I do like those. I think they're eye-catching. I will say I recommend that, but I do not recommend emojis ever. Don't do any emojis. I know they're not officially banned yet, but in my mind they are banned. So no emojis and no HTML, I believe, either. That is definitely banned.
Mhm.
But for these specifically, I see they have punctuation and are complete sentences, so could just rephrase a little bit to make them a little more as just short thoughts.
Excellent. And just to clarify once again, no HTML, that's banned, but emojis are just sort of out of fashion.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
Okay. They say that about my Crocs as well. Hasn't
Mm.
stopped me yet. But that said, while Crocs are making a comeback, emojis are not.
They're not.
So I agree with Megan in this case. What about the images on this listing? While we're at the top of the page, what stands out about those?
Some are repetitive.
Mhm.
I know
agree.
for supplements, it is a little bit trickier because you do have to show all the nutritional facts or all sides of the bottle.
All sides of the bottle, yeah.
Sides of the bottle. So I've seen it before where there's one image that shows all different sides, all 3 or 4 sides of a bottle in one instead of individual images. So that frees up space for you to add in more infographic type images or more lifestyle images.
How would that look, by the way? Would that be like the front and the center and then the other sides next to it?
Yes, yeah, like turned, I guess, photoshopped together or taken together, however that works. But yes, all in one image, just side by side.
Gotcha. Excellent. By the way, before we continue, I do want to note plenty of reviews, 4.5 stars. So we don't have to talk about that in any more detail. So that is good to see. Same with this, ships from Amazon, sold by Vital for You. So those are good things. Now let's move on to, once again, the A+ content. And we have a very interesting A+ content setup this time. Thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's completely different than the last in terms of, there still is a decent amount of text, more than really I would prefer to see, or not as broken up as I'd like to see that text. I do really like this layout for showing what's in the package there, or at least the concept of showing all of the different vitamins and supplements that are included in there.
Excellent. I am curious about, in this setup here, it's great to have, knowing what's in this product. But the last one here makes me a little curious. I realize it says FDA inspected facility, but could that potentially be misleading to an Amazon shopper?
I don't know that it could be misleading to an Amazon shopper. I think it's very clear. I think it could be misleading to an Amazon bot. That's I actually encountered that recently with a client, but also it's like any of you who have experienced the pesticides warnings, which probably many of you have, even if you're not in a category that is anywhere adjacent to pesticides. The bots flag a lot of words. So saying FDA in a listing, even when you're saying you are compliant with something, or it meets a certain guideline, that can be a flag for the bots to flag your listing as potentially being a restricted product or something, because you say FDA something without showing an FDA registration number or something like that. So while it's a great call out for something that you're proud of and that is, probably very important to your products, I would always just caution using something like that, because it can be something that even temporarily takes your listing down, and that's not ideal. And
Indeed.
mentioning pesticides, there's a number of things with pesticides saying it's not a pesticide, or it doesn't do certain things, or it is antimicrobial. Like those things that seem like really innocuous and really like selling points for your listing, there's a a bunch of different things like that, that if you put them in your listing, it actually can do you more harm than good, because of how Amazon evaluates these listings with automation rather than, real humans.
Right. So effectively what you're saying is that you put this on here, then somebody might come to you and say, prove it at some point in the future.
Yeah, they will
Or
take
ask
your
for
listing.
documentation.
Yeah, they'll take your listing down and say you've said something that you can't say without that, backup documentation. So until you do that, your listing no longer exists on Amazon, essentially.
Oof. We don't want that. No listing, no customers, no sales. Real quick, I want to note about the A+ content as well. I thought I'd open the storefront, which, by the way, if you are brand registered, you're able to have A+ content on your listing. Set up a storefront too. A lot of sponsor brand advertising you can direct to a storefront. If you do that, you've got the customer's full attention. They can't see any other brands on your storefront. If you don't have that and your sponsored brand content just goes to a listing, or a list of products, other people can show up on that page, and you don't want that. But I wanted to note as well, this storefront for Vital for You has a certain theme, presence, voice, whatever you want to call it. And I'm not saying either way, but what I am saying is you want to make sure that your sponsored brand, or your storefront content and your A+ content are aligned, that they have the same brand voice, you have a similar presence, similar color scheme, and so on. Sorry, I'm starting to repeat myself, which I do sometimes. I apologize. I also sometimes repeat myself, so I apologize for that too. But with this one, does anything else stand out about the A+ content?
I would go off of what you said. You want to just know who your ideal customer is. For me, it seems like they're really targeting athletes. And so bringing that from the storefront to your A+, I see a lot of athletic based images. So just knowing, okay, do athletes need to know or want to know what specific, all of these specific supplements have in them and what they do, or maybe they are aware of that already. So just know your audience and kind of tailor your imagery and your wording towards that in your store, and keep it consistent with your A+ as well.
Excellent. Now, I agree. There's a cyclist on here, not a biker. There's a critical difference between cyclist and biker, which I had to learn. But one more thing, we've got a video on here. So let's take a quick look. Now, I do hear audio at this point. You may not hear that audio. I'm not sure, but let's take a look visually. We made it simple. I'm glad. I like simple.
I like this.
Convenient pack. I like that. So I'll take a note there. We'll let this finish up real quick, though. Okay, so I've got a couple of things I wanted to mention. One of them is this little baggie with a card and nutrition information on it. So I'm curious, and Jess or Megan, let me know if you're aware, which are we buying? Are we buying a bottle? Are we buying a baggie on a card? Or are we buying a bottle of baggies? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't think it's terrible that the baggie on the card is included in the video, because I think it's very common for brands to use one video across all of their products and feature different things. So I think that's not terrible, but you kind of just showed that, I think, on one of the images, or did I imagine that you scrolled over?
You're right.
Yeah. So that is, I think that's your point makes sense with this image. It's, that is confusing. Are they just baggies? Are they loose in there? Or is it on the card? And that is not entirely clear based on these kind of repetitive images showing something a little bit different in each one.
Indeed. Now, as someone who spends a lot of time around Amazon listings, I can make an educated guess that this bottle is a 30 count of a baggie. So there's 30 baggies in there. My guess is there's one card at the top to give you critical information about it, and then it's just baggies in there. But it's potentially unclear. The only other thing about this video is nothing terrible. It's just a note that I had in my mind. This is the start of the transition to the brand logo. And it is about 6 or 7 seconds from start to finish. And that seems a little long. Again, that's not a big deal, but you are dealing with the Amazon shopper whose attention may or may not be long enough to get your brand across. Now let's see if at the beginning, is the brand mentioned at the beginning of the video? It is not. So that could be an alternative, is start with the logo, move into the rest of the video, and then have the logo again at the end to bookend the content. Anything else that y'all would like to add with this one?
No, I think we touched on all the major points there.
Okay, got it. Now I actually want to, let's see here. Let's talk about this one, the shoe glue. Now I have not had the pleasure of using shoe glue. Please see my previous statement about wearing Crocs, which are just one piece of foam rubber that there is no sole to separate from. But I have had that happen in the past, and I would just get new shoes. Knowing this exists, that's great. But what are we seeing here? Anything jump out about this listing?
I would say the reviews, or the ratings
Oh,
speak for themselves for this product. That is a lot of reviews, and that's really awesome.
indeed.
Yeah,
9,600.
almost makes it tough to critique something that clearly is, performing really well. But like I said at the beginning, I guess, no one's getting it 100% right all of the time. Things change with Amazon. So what might have been okay or performed well previously may not in the future, or just, changing things up seasonally and keeping things fresh. So I'm sure we can find some things to pick on here.
Indeed. I will say there's one thing that's standing out to me about this one that isn't an issue or something that didn't stand out to me about the previous listings. There's not a video on this one. There's not a moving representation of what this product does. Now you may think to yourself, this product speaks for itself. It's called shoe glue, shoe fix glue, but I like the way it's laid out to where shoe glue are right next to each other vertically. Nevertheless, a video could help expand your reach. People could think to themselves, well, how do I do this? The instructions are not enough, even though there's an image of someone literally using the product. A video in motion can help people more fully understand that.
Agreed. Also, this product does not have a store. I know we touched on that before. This one does not have a store, and I know you touched on it, but I also love stores because it is your brand's mini website within Amazon, and competitors can't advertise on your stores. So like you said, you capture their attention and they can explore more of your catalog. So that's something else that could help this listing brand.
Yeah, I just clicked on the seller Enjoy Distributors, and it says go to the Enjoy Distributors storefront. And when you do that, you get these two products. And you mentioned capturing their attention. Notice that Adidas shows up down here. This scale shows up over here. Other sellers are trying to capture my attention right now. They would not be able to do that with the storefront. So I may have thought about buying shoe glue, but hey, I know Adidas. That's a brand I recognize. Oh, shoe cleaner. That's kind of like shoe glue. I'm going to divert my attention over to there. I'm not, but a potential customer may do that.
So I wonder here, if you did have the link that says go to the storefront, do we know for this particular brand if they have created a storefront and there is just a mismatch, the products aren't matching up to their storefront? Because that could just be a technical issue that they need to address with Amazon.
Nope.
Yeah, so their brand Enjoy is being linked to a different brand Enjoy. Is that?
Correct. Yeah. So Enjoy is a distinct, separate brand by itself, but let's try Amazon.com/Enjoy distributors. Still nothing there. Now, I could just not be aware of what the URL is for the storefront.
Right, because you can create a custom URL. But yeah, that's something I would question is, if we don't know for certain one way or another, it could definitely just be a technical issue with a mismatch, especially given that there is another brand, but specifically here, the brand listed is Shoe Fix. So I think what we'd be looking for is the Shoe Fix brand store, not the Enjoy brand store.
I'm going to try one more time. Nope, we get
Oh,
waffles.
but look at
instead.
waffles.
Hello, waffles. We love you. Now, so in either direction, whether they don't have a storefront at all, or if they have a storefront and the products are not linked there, either way, customers aren't going to be able to find it effectively. Now, they may stumble on your storefront somehow elsewhere, but it's unlikely. Most people find your store from finding a product they like and getting there. Either way, a store could be helpful. Now, that said, I want to move on down to see if we have A+ content on here, but real quick, pointing at the bullets here, similar to what we said before, avoid keyword stuffing, avoid a lot of text, start with some all caps blurb there. Just wanted to point that out since that's something we discussed previously in more detail. That's something that could help this listing as well.
Before you scroll, same on title. We talked about title on the other two, but we didn't hear. So, it is, like we said, starting with the brand, but it is leaving off, like we talked about on the first one, the size of the item. So this title is very bare. And I wouldn't add a bunch of stuff just for the sake of adding words, but I would make sure to include something like, the type of container it is and the size of it. So, whatever, and I don't even, there we go, 0.7 ounce bottle.
Right, 20 grams, exactly.
Yeah, so whichever, they lean into in terms of measurement, I would put the unit of measure there. And then I would say what type of, is it a bottle? Is it whatever it might be? I would include that in the title as well, just to make it, like we talked about in the first listing, a little easier to convert that.
Excellent point. Thank you. Let's take a look at A+ content. So, okay, before we even look at the A+ content, I want to reiterate something I mentioned earlier. They have it on this listing. They have A+ content, but we can't find a storefront. Again, not only aligning your A+ content with your storefront content to have a consistent brand voice is good, but we know they're brand registered because they have this A+ content. So adding a storefront could be very helpful. So I say that because we could have been in a situation where they're not brand registered, and that's why they can't do a storefront. But as we can see here, they are. So they can. But let's take a look at the A+ content, and I am immediately seeing a lot of text, as Jess mentioned on that first listing. Would that be accurate to you, Jess?
Yep, and there's a couple places there that I would call wall of text.
Indeed. By the way, let me zoom back out to regular size so you can see how much text there is. And if somebody's scrolling through here, this how to use will catch their attention, but making it more visually interesting could keep their attention for longer and make the consideration of this product greater. Now, I don't know exactly how you would make more dynamic imagery around shoe glue in particular, but perhaps the two of you have thoughts or not. That's great if you don't.
Well, I like the before and afters in the images above, so maybe some more similar to that. And just a few call outs, like a few key things on the glue that you could pull maybe from the bullets, just making those more visual and
Mhm.
no graphic like.
Right. I did think of one more actually, because you mentioned the before and after, which I think is a great point. You could also say, look how strong it is by gluing something heavy to something else. You don't necessarily want people to do that, but it could help visualize the strength of the glue.
Yeah, you could, so with like the instructions there, you could make each of those an infographic. So image 1 with bullet point 1, so that those line up better and just it looks a little bit better visually.
Indeed. Excuse me.
And then I think helpful tips as well, like not all of those would necessarily need to be turned into infographics, but I think you could make that more visually exciting if you did incorporate some of that into graphics. Even if just like helpful tips was like a graphic banner, just something to like draw you into the next section.
Right. Keep the customer's attention as long as possible. The longer they stay on this page, the more likely they are to end up making that purchase. I realize not everybody's a huge fan of it, but I'm a huge fan of using page views, sessions, and then unit session percentage to help determine what some of your best products are if you have a larger catalog. Again, because the longer they spend on this page, the more likely it's a session, and the more likely that session will become a unit sold. Anything else that the two of you would like to talk about with this one?
I don't think so.
Moment. I am going to switch things up a little bit here. And you didn't see anything when it comes to the moving of tabs into this other order. But Paul Brown, Hawaii Treat Elite, leave-in keratin spray. One thing I'll say is Paul Brown was a politician from Georgia. Doesn't impact most customers. Is a little weird to see Paul Brown Expressway or whatever in Georgia and then come onto Amazon and see that he also has keratin spray. I don't think they're affiliated. Nevertheless, I will add about this title. It has the brand. It does have a size. Is there anything else that we should add to it?
I mean, truly, I know other people would disagree with me. So Megan, it's okay if you have a different opinion, but truly from the directive that Amazon has been given lately, this kind of hits on all of the points. It's got the brand, it has what the product is, it has, you know, the type, which is spray, it has the size, and it's in keeping with, you know, the 50 to 60 characters that they're really recommending. I know that scares a lot of people, but as we've discussed, there's other places to put keywords, but personal preference may dictate that some people would like to see that beefed up a little bit more. And as long as you're meeting your character limits, that's okay too.
Excellent. I do agree with you. All the relevant information is there, and it's not so long as to be an exhausting read for a shopper. Now, we did talk about bullet points earlier. This is one where, again, you start with all caps, but actually the all caps this time, that's not a short summary to me. That looks like a long summary in all caps, followed by a long bullet point that, as Megan pointed out earlier, has punctuation as well. Now, again, I mentioned this earlier, some of these things we're going to go through relatively quickly, but reviews is another thing. There's 45 ratings at 4.5 stars, but cultivating new ratings could be helpful. Ships from Amazon, so it's FBA, that's good. Images generally look pretty good. There is a video. I'm going to put it on mute.
There is pillar boxing.
Oh yeah, pillar boxing on the sides. Looking at the thumbnail here, the white space is present in the thumbnail, but the bars on the side, the pillar boxing, as Megan mentioned, that's not there. Would you guess, Megan, that this is ideally formatted for mobile?
I would think so, yes. Which is good, but also does not look good on desktop when you look at it here.
Right, exactly. Now I'm one of those old people who gets upset with people when they film things vertically, but that's the way of the future. TikTok has shown us that. And a vertical video is great for mobile. And a lot of Amazon shoppers, I believe the majority, vast majority of Amazon shoppers are shopping on mobile.
I think
And
it's
that
a,
means,
I think it's a 50-50 split. That's something we definitely should have
Oh.
looked up beforehand so we could speak intelligently on that. But I do think the last time I saw it, it was pretty close, maybe a little skewed towards mobile. If anybody knows, tell us in the comments. We'd love
Yeah.
a real-time fact check here, but I think it's surprisingly still a lot of people use Amazon on desktop.
But I will
Indeed.
say a lot of Amazon sellers forget that there's the mobile and the desktop version, specifically on listings and storefronts. Like you can optimize each for desktop or mobile or both. And typically people just pick one and then it looks like this on the other. So be sure to make sure you're reviewing all your products on your phone and on a desktop.
Indeed. That doesn't just go for Amazon sellers, that goes for web developers too, by the way. Make sure that your website looks good. Speaking of websites, I know I'm moving pretty quick here, but I want to show you something about this one. Now, another peek behind the scenes. I did actually look at these before the webinar, so that's why I know this is going to happen. One thing to tell you is the other day when I brought this product up, it said often out of stock. Avoid that if at all possible. As you can see, that's gone now. Probably a good sign, but it could come back if this product goes out of stock again, because the shopper is going to see that and think, oh, well, maybe I want to find something. But the other thing I want to drive at is a storefront. Wonderful. You've got good content on the storefront. It's very bright, very colorful, very eye-catching. But you know what's missing? A+ content on the listing. So we have the opposite situation from before. There is a storefront, but the listing itself doesn't have A+ content. Instead, we just have a run-of-the-mill product description. Not the end of the world, but that said, A+ content keeps attention, and you likely are going to see more conversions with A+ content being down here. Again, I know, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just going to say you could take, I know the bullets are somewhat long, so you could take some of that information and put it in your A+ content.
Indeed. Restorative healing for damaged hair. Yeah, I'm thinking of some images similar to those old shampoo commercials that you could put in there. Believe it or not, I haven't been shopping for shampoo in recent history, so I don't know exactly what we're looking for. But nonetheless, yeah, that's a great point, Megan. I can definitely immediately think of some images that could go on there in the A+ content. Again, we only have a few minutes left, and I do want to go through the last couple of listings briefly, just to touch on them. We've got this, and it looks like this time the bullets don't have the keyword stuffing. In fact, the bullets don't have much going on at all, but the title has a lot of keyword stuffing. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I would say so. That it includes a lot of stuff there that really isn't necessary for the shopper to make their initial decision as to whether or not to come to this page. If you're using, like we talked about before, that stuff in your back end keywords, that's going to get the right shoppers to your product and search results. And then you give them just what they need to know to click through on that.
Excellent. Another thing here, the images, they are, if you showed me each of these images separately and I didn't cycle through them like this, with one exception, this one, I may not be able to tell you if you showed me a different picture, if you showed me these a few minutes apart. So more variability in what's going on in these pictures, make them more visually interesting and engaging. Maybe have it on someone's shelf after building in a lifestyle image. Add a video to the bottom as well. I mentioned the bullet points. Again, the opposite situation where we don't have much content at all when it comes to bullets. It is FBA. That's good. Our eagle-eyed viewers out there may have noticed no reviews here either. Now on this one, I want to say that we were not able to see, oh no, there it is, I apologize. November 25th. So even more recent than the other one we looked at. Again, though, cultivating some reviews for this product could help generate additional sales moving forward. Because again, come down here, you see a tumbleweed blow by on your screen. Amazon, you can have that tip for free. Go ahead and make tumbleweeds go by if there's no reviews. So yeah, again, I wanted to touch on that one briefly, but impactfully, because this is one where there are a lot of changes I would make. Again, though, there's a storefront, but no A+ content. So similar situation to the previous one. Anything else to add here?
I think you covered it all.
Mhm.
Cool. I know I'm rapid firing through these, but we've got one more, and it's a rake. Now, this is a rake I've considered buying. It is a pretty cool rake. As you can see, a lot of people like this rake, 4.5 stars with almost 4,000 reviews. Now, the bullet points look a little overloaded. They've got easy to use, durable, versatile, efficient. Those are fantastic starter words because it just right there, I know durable. Okay, great. It's not going to break. Perfect. The images look pretty good. There's even a video. This time we're not going to watch the video so we can leave more time to talk about what's going on with this one. Now, this is something that I had hoped would have been resolved by the time we got to this webinar today, and that is the buy box. This is exactly what we were talking about before. Megan, you described a client that you worked with that they apparently had a very similar situation. I say similar only because, correct me if I'm wrong, but with that seller, they were the only one selling that product. Is that right?
Yes, correct. They were the only sellers. So I believe if you click on this, could you see how many sellers? So this one has a number of sellers. So this is a shared listing, but in that situation with that client, they were the only seller and they still did not have the buy box.
Gotcha. So that's an even more critical issue, that if you're the only seller and the only person selling this product and you don't have the buy box, something's up. You need to get that fixed. Open a case ASAP. Now with this one, I would still recommend trying to figure out what's going on here, because we have several sellers. It is a shared listing, which has its own foibles and pitfalls. We'll talk about that in a moment, but no one is showing as winning the buy box. That means for advertising, even if you can buy this product, with that one exception I mentioned earlier, you're not able to actually advertise this. So we need to double check that. Meanwhile, again, the other critical issue is, why is nobody winning the buy box here? Jess, do you have any thoughts on that?
There could be a lot of reasons for no one winning the buy box. It could be pricing off Amazon. If no one has a price that Amazon prefers, and that's really up to Amazon's preference, their 90-day average, what they think is fair for that product, what is comparable products. That could be a reason for it. It could also be because none of them are, high enough rated sellers, or a combination of sellers with high enough rating that are also FBA, that kind of meet all of those things that Amazon is looking for to award that buy box out. We'll never really know, because Amazon doesn't tell us exactly what they do to choose the buy box, so that they can kind of be flexible with that from time to time. But those are the things that I would zero in on from what we're able to see here without knowing the back end of any of these sellers.
Right. Indeed. Now, I will add, the big issue here is that as it's a shared listing, that means the only thing that sellers can do is make suggestions for this listing to be changed. I would still pursue those recommendations, or excuse me, yes, that's the right word. That was seconds ago. You'd think I'd remember. Go ahead and pursue those suggestions, those recommendations to Amazon, but also, again, the big thing here is nobody's winning the buy box. So even if you make those suggestions and the listing gets an update, it's still not going to see as many sales because that buy box is missing.
And just real quick, I want to chime in. We did get some feedback directly from, I think, one of the sellers here that has let us know that pricing is exactly the issue that it was. And they are waiting to release a map price soon, which should help avoid things like this in the future to ensure that off Amazon pricing doesn't impact the on Amazon pricing and buy box isn't lost as a result.
Gotcha. Hi, Leanne. Thank you for clarifying that with us. Cheaper price off Amazon. Jess mentioned bots earlier. They're not just checking Amazon. They are checking off Amazon to make sure that prices are consistent across the internet. And one more thing, the most critical thing is that's all the listings we have, which is convenient considering we're out of time. Now, a couple of other things to mention. One, you know what, before I get to that, I'll give Megan and Jess the opportunity for any closing statements about these listings.
I mean, I think I said my piece at the beginning, so I will not add to add that again here in the, just trying to keep it brief and let us close out. But Megan, you didn't get that chance.
I'll just quickly reiterate what you said, that listings always do need a little bit of tweaking. They'll never be perfect. And Amazon is constantly changing. So just keep apprised of all of the new things happening within Amazon, and just update your listings. I would suggest every quarter to 6 months do a listing review.
Excellent advice. Thank you for that, Megan. And Jess, we still value your advice too, even though it was an hour ago.
Hopefully it's still sticking with people. It was a whole hour ago.
I will say we have given you a lot of tips today. We know it's a lot of work to execute on that. As Megan mentioned, if you're going to do that regularly, it's even more work. It's not a set it and forget it sort of situation. Now, I will add, we can do it for you. If you are interested in having Seller Lab services, go ahead and take on the task of handling that for you. Take a look at the chat for a link directly to that page where you can learn more information there. And in the words of Columbo, played by Peter Falk, that's another one for my fellow old folks. Just one more thing. There is a post on Instagram about this webinar, and we realize you may have seen it already, but what I'd like you to do, if you have the time, is go to that post about our webinar on Instagram, and the first few people to comment with their favorite tip from today's webinar will get a special surprise. So I believe that that's also in the chat while I looked away. It sure is. Thank you very much for doing that, Jess. Again, special surprise, your favorite tip, first few people to put that on that post on Instagram. And that's all I have. I really appreciate having you join us today. And we're going to be doing this more often. There's not going to be another significant gap between webinars. Be on the lookout for more on all of our social channels and at sellerlabs.com. And thanks.